Hola, bom dia, Munson here with the Good Morning Portugal live stream, YouTube and podcast for happy homesteaders here in Portugal, likely to be expats and explorers, immigrants into the country who, until recently, were just getting on with creating a good and different and new life in Portugal. And of course, the pandemic comes along and has thrown us a bit of a curveball. So we're working our way around and through that. And that's what the Happy Homesteaders group is all about. In some ways, is a response to the pandemic, and that's why you see the titles on the screen there: predictions, proposals, and plans. We will have a look at George Branco's reporting from yesterday to keep you up to date with the facts and figures. And it continues to be a bit of a whiny show this morning. I could say to you, "Hey Joe, where are you going with that bottle of wine in your hand?" as a bit of a clue to what we're talking about, and really to dig a little bit deeper into my embarrassment yesterday and my snobbery that just came straight out when Julie volunteered her favourite Portuguese wine as being Matias Rosé. And I just came out with a kind of knee-jerk standard response that I think a lot of people do with Matias Rosé, and we can put it into perspective a little bit later on in the live stream when we look at the history of Matias Rosé, loved by the Queen of England, Jimi Hendrix, and Saddam Hussein, apparently, and dating back to the 1940s. So a fascinating history, which we'll look into a little bit more later, with some feedback from some of the gang who watched the YouTube version of this. And I'm very grateful to you for your comments that have been coming through on YouTube. And glad to receive comments in any way to let me know how the show, live stream, podcast, and YouTube channel can work best for you in these crazy times. So let's have a look at George Branco's reporting. The coronavirus in Portugal for estrangeiros. This is George's newsletter. Oh, that's a nice sight, isn't it? A beer on the beach there. Wow, okay. I promise you I wasn't obsessing with that before I came on air, as it were. It just happened to be where it stopped, coincidentally. Promise. It's all about the wine and the beer at the moment, it would seem. So this is the English language coronavirus news in Portugal for May the 6th, yesterday, of course, titled Help for Independent Workers and More on Schools and Beaches. And George says another 15 COVID-19 patients have died, which is the second fewest after yesterday's 11 since March. So something seems to be working. That's me, not George, saying that. The health authorities found more than 2 times as many new cases today, 480 compared to yesterday, 178. Okay, so that's not so good. It's at the higher end of the amount of new confirmations we've seen in the last week and a bit. But in the last week and a bit, but we can't take much information away from a single day's worth of testing. Okay, fair enough. In better news, we have the highest number of recoveries recorded in one day, 333, taking the total beyond 2,000. Isn't that great? So 480 new confirmed cases as of yesterday. Excuse me, 26,182 altogether. And there's quite a lot of pollen. That's what I'm going to say it is anyway, coming off the Pinheiro Manso tree outside my window here, which is making me a bit wheezy, in case you were concerned. So the confirmed cases, isn't it horrible to be explaining my cough whilst telling you about the increase in confirmed cases? 1.87 increase there in percentage terms. And of course, as George says, there are 15 new deaths in Portugal, taking the death toll to over 1,089. That's a 1.4 percentage increase, and now over 2,000 recoveries, officially tested recoveries. That is not just like, I think I've had it and I'm better now, but like proper tested recoveries of 2,076. More help for independent workers has been announced. The eligibility for government support has been widened to include more independent workers, reports the Diario de Noticias. Currently, only independent workers who chose to make social security payments in their first 12 months of working are protected. On Wednesday, this is what governments are doing around the world, isn't it? Working on the figures that they get the last laugh here, don't they? Because they're working on the figures that you gave them. On Wednesday, Prime Minister Antonio Costa said his government would take a step, in inverted commas, to also protect self-employed workers who chose not to make payments in their first year. There might be some questions to be answered there, folks. Naturally, he said, they would not receive the same amount as those who made contributions in that first year. State support will also be widened to small business owners who employ up to 10 workers. Previously, it was only available to small business owners without any employees. The guarantee period for access to employment benefits is also being extended. So Portuguese government stepping up to help people. And I guess it's only right, really, isn't it? In a way, if the government enforces you to not work, arguably the state should perhaps, having made you not work, support you while you're not working. Your views on that, obviously, welcome in the comments. Small beaches. There's the beer picture. Small beaches might eventually. When small beaches might not open this summer, but when beaches eventually reopen, there are likely to be different rules depending on their size. Deputy Secretary of State to the Prime Minister, Tiago Antunes, tells Publico. Specifically, Antunes warned some smaller beaches might remain closed to stop gatherings of people. The issue is how to keep people far enough apart on a small beach compared to one with a large area of sand where people can spread out. It's just one of the ideas the government is considering. And this is what happens, isn't it, when things are considered at such a high level? They have to come up with some quite crazy sounding ideas. It seems to me. The bathing season is due to start on June the 1st, but there are still many uncertainties, Publico reports. Some beaches could open with conditions, others later in the year, and still others not at all. And this is where I think, this is my personal opinion, not the views of George Branco or anyone else, just my views, that these are the sorts of things that should be managed on a local level, not by centralized government. It's easier, isn't it, when you've only got a population of 11 million in Portugal, rather than 60 plus million where I'm from in the UK. But to be having kind of one office making decisions for millions of people, fair enough as a guideline, but surely these things should be trusted on a local level, given some top level guidelines, and then managed locally by and we've got a great local management system in Portugal, haven't we, with the cameras and the freguesias and so on. The whole level of government seems pretty smart to me, and you could just issue some guidelines and let people manage it locally. Trust them to do that. Okay, I'll just pop back for a moment to see how everyone's doing, and we will return to George Branco's coverage, but just wanted to say hello to Claire and Steve. Cloudy, nice weather report there. Thank you for popping that in your greeting there. Claire and Steve, cloudy in Lolé today. Bon dia all, liking it. The Portuguese there, keep it coming. Tudo bem? Eloise, and from Mrs. M elsewhere in the building here. Morning all. And I know there's a few others watching. Say hello, folks. It'd be lovely to know what you're doing, what your favorite Portuguese wine is, what your favorite Portuguese phrase is. We will return to that in just a moment. But let us just to have a look. This is the reason why I want your predictions and proposals and plans. And I really didn't expect to go to a Portuguese article, and now I'm embarrassed because I cannot. My Portuguese is not up to it. But I'll give you the headline figures from George Branco's reporting here. The European Commission predicts an EU-wide GDP decline of 7.5%, with 6.8% in Portugal. The BBC reports in English here. So let's have a little look at the English version of this, what's going on, and the economic predictions, because that's what I would like to know. What you're thinking, what your predictions are, what your proposals are, and what your plans are. Because we can find ourselves, can we not, in this position of, waiting to be guided as to what to do, and then being critical or uncritical of what we are being told to do, but just basically drifting into what I'm about to share with you now, which I think is potentially a bit of a grim scenario. It's certainly on the economic level. It doesn't have to be like that on a personal level. I'm sure if we choose to manage things, in our own autonomous, sovereign way, if you like, and work together, as I said, on a local level. So there is this top level of what the government, the state will want people to do. And then there's our personal response to that. And that's what I'm really interested in. That's what the Happy Homesteaders, I was going to say army, they're not a land army, maybe, is all about. So here you go. Here's the BBC coverage of the coronavirus. EU facing deep and uneven recession. My guess is that it will be not unlike 2008 again, if not worse, in Portugal. Sorry if I'm ruining your breakfast, but I'd say it, on the basis that we can respond to it as well, personally. And there people are it's often seen that the super rich are untouched by this, but it might be that the super poor, in a strange sort of way, are untouched as well. And those living sort of voluntary simplicity or living lightly will be less touched by this as well. The European Union faces a deep and uneven recession, according to a new forecast from the EU Commission. Highly popular in the UK, with half of people. The bloc's executive arm predicts a recovery in 2021, but warns that the uncertainty is exceptionally high. That's code, isn't it? Journalistic lingo for no one knows what the hell is really going to happen. The uncertainty is exceptionally high. The Commission predicts a decline in economic activity this year of 7.5%, and slightly more than that for the Eurozone. It warns the outcome could be worse if the pandemic turns out to be longer or more severe than currently envisaged. European and other governments are intentionally blocking economic activity to contain the virus, so a sharp downturn is inevitable. That said, the Commission's forecast do put some rather stark numbers on the extent of the damage the EU can expect to sustain. I'm not going to read about Great Depressions. You get the gist of what I'm suggesting to you there. And I'm interested to know what you want to do about it. This is the important thing. And just put that aside for one moment, please, because look, news just in from the Austin household. I'd like to wish my wife, Linda, happy 29th wedding anniversary and our first in Portugal. Love her to bits. Well done, Gary. Thank you, you old romantic. And you know what you need to be saying? Feliz aniversario, meu amor. We did that, didn't we, last week with our delve into what to say in Portuguese on such occasions. So feliz aniversario to you, both in the Austin household, and cracking containers that you made from your old galvanized shutters. I think they were shutters, Gary, yesterday. So yeah, lots of love to you in the Austin household, and have a great day and evening. What wine will you be drinking tonight, if I may pry into such intimacies? Good morning, all friends of Good Morning Portugal. That's a lovely greeting this morning from Sintra, from Druba there. Good morning to you, my friend, and from Neil Perkins. Yes, it's Clap the Staff Day. I can't remember what it's called, what the hashtag thing is, but yes, it is show your appreciation. Certainly in the UK, that's probably, this happens all over the world, of course, now at the moment. The frontline care workers and medical staff rightly being shown appreciation. I don't know if that's a reference to that, Neil, but yes, mask on and round of applause anyway from you, Neil. And Eloise just shared some lovely language files relating the garden and farm in the Happy Homesteaders group. Oh, really good content. Thank you so much. Some language input there. If you're not in the Happy Homesteaders group on Facebook, please join us if you're in line with our vibes here. Bon dia, Carl. We're on pool duty, trying to figure out how everything works as we've got some green algae growing. Ew. Good to eat. I think it has medicinal properties, but not if it's been soaked in chlorine. Decided to shock the water with chlorine, which has improved it a lot. I bet it has. We had a hot tub at home, so basing the formula on that. What could possibly go wrong? The owner of Villa hasn't got a clue. So if anyone has advice, please let us know. And let's hope the owner of the Villa isn't watching this morning. John Cunningham. Good morning to you, John. And thank you for joining us this morning. And it's simply a wave, says Neil, not a round of applause for the medical and health workers. Or I'm sure Neil would endorse that. Thank you, Neil. A wave back to you, my friend. And virtual abrazos to you as well, virtual hugs. So come on. What are your predictions? What are your proposals? What are your plans? For us, it's happy homesteading. The chickens were looking fine. Those 5 ladies in the converted larder were very happy. And when I say converted larder, you're thinking maybe of a tiny little room. It's a big room. This is an old pension, little hotel that we are living in, renovating, caretakers of at the moment. And the old refrigerators out in the yard, I've taken the doors off those and turned them into a chicken coop. And it's pretty 5-star, it has to be said, I think, for chickens. And there's 5 of them. And they've doubled in size in the 2 or 3 weeks that we've had them. So, yes. And Neil, this is a clap. Need to brush up on your emoji knowledge. So I'm getting schooled in emojis by Neil. Okay. Thank you very much for giving me the clap this morning, Neil, albeit in emoji style. Okay, where was I? You distracted me so badly. I really want to know what you're thinking, what your predictions are. Or is no one saying anything because no one really knows? And when you don't know, you just got to make your best bet, right? So you could tell me what your best bet is for, how how I started the show this morning was like, a lot of us have come to Portugal to live the good life, a new life, and live closer to nature. Like I've said before, it's not back to normal, it's back to nature for us here at Casamunson. And our plan is to get back closer to nature, self-sufficiency, self-reliance, connected with the community as well. Not to be independent and off-grid and completely separate from everybody, but to be interdependent and perhaps less reliant. It would appear to be a good idea at the moment to be less and less reliant on the state, on the super state, and the kind of overwhelming way of things. The what's it called? The culture, the overwhelming culture, and capitalism and all that sort of stuff, which, I think is pretty precarious and fragile. But less of my political, philosophical rantings and more now. And John Cunningham's going to love this picture, because I want to talk about, and while I do this, actually, let me just put these on the screen for you. A little bit of, I'm really going easy on you with the Portuguese. This is so easy, and you probably already know it, but thought I'd mention it. Eloise did ask me yesterday what the wine, I recommended a Quinta do Cardo organic wine yesterday, and she asked me what was it, red or white, and it was a Vinho Tinto, a red wine. Vinho Branco, of course, is white wine, and Vinho Verde is green, the fizzy, fresh green sparkling wine. And actually, if I go back to Jorge Branco's coverage, his on a lighter note story tells us about Verdes. So when Ivica Maricic went to a Tasca, I didn't know Tasca was a cheap restaurant. That's something else for you today. In Vila Nova do Milfontes, a beautiful part of Alentejo, I understand. In 1983, it would have been amazing then. He figured his Spanish, Italian, and a bit of Latin knowledge would serve him well, but it wasn't the case. He and his companion chose some meat and fish plates without any idea of what they were ordering. Before he saw verdes, greens, written on the menu. Thinking they must be side dishes, he chose 2 verdes at random and a bottle of Vinho Tinto red wine. Of course, the waiter thought it was a bit weird, but dutifully delivered their food along with a bottle of red wine and 2 bottles of Vinho Verde. I'm sure a good time was had by all, nonetheless. A paleo diet with no greens on the side, but 2 bottles of green wine. Amazing. This Diario de Noticias feature on foreigners, and there's the link there to it if you get George's newsletter. For foreigners who become fluent is a little bit of a hope for anyone who's ever felt like they'll never learn Portuguese. We've all been there. Although it does mention most of them still have difficulties occasionally. I'm sure that's true. I know that even Portuguese people have difficulties understanding each other. Such is the nature of the language. Okay, I want to go now to this wonderful picture that I want to share with you that I said John Cunningham will like. I read this early, made me laugh. I'm not sure what you're referring to there, John, but do let us know. A new name. I have done indoor wall climbing. Maybe time to try the outdoor version. Christopher John Knowles, I feel like I know you better. This is what lockdown presumably has brought to you, is you've literally started climbing the walls, and that has been training for you to try the outdoor version. Tell me, John, also what made you laugh. That would be great. So look at this. This is especially for you. This image is dedicated to you, John Cunningham. I think you'll appreciate this. And I need to find the right screen to share with you. It was on Facebook, of course. And there is Jimi Hendrix. And this is a photo I found last night. I've got to apologize to Julie Fox and my snobbery about Matthias Rosé. And I want to tell you some of the history of Matthias Rosé. And this is quite amazing, actually, the story of Matthias Rosé. It goes back to the 1940s. And this is made by the Sagrap company. And I want to tell you a little bit about it now. You know it, I suspect. Well, English people know it anyway, as a strangely shaped bottle of wine from the 1970s. And the brand was actually created in 1945, and production began at the end of World War II. The wine was especially styled to appeal to the rapidly developing North American and Northern European markets, hence its sweetness. It was sweeter, I believe, in its earlier versions. As early admirer, Sacheverell, is that the right way to say it? Sacheverell Sitwell, sibling of Edith Sitwell. Among the delights of Portugal, I imagine he spelled like this, are the unfamiliar wines upon the wine list. There is one wine that is altogether exceptional. It comes from the remote northern province of Trás-os-Montes. This is the most delicious vin rosé that I've ever tasted. It is called Metius, and it may be that the view of the lovely villa of that name near Villarreal, which is upon the label, makes the wine taste even better. For the villa has a facade of granite and white stucco and many urns and statues. But what is unique in this wine is that it is the color of orangeade and slightly pétillant. Pétillant. Let no one despise it for its color. Matius is delicious beyond words, and since I'm told it will travel and is exported to Brazil, it is a pity that one cannot buy it here in England. Check that review out from the 1940s. Production grew rapidly in the 50s, 60s, and by the late 80s, supplemented with a white version. It almost accounted for 40% of Portugal's total export of table wine. Wow! At that time, worldwide sales were 3.25 million cases per year of Matius Rosé. The producer, the Segrap family company, which owns the brand, is the largest wine producer in Portugal and has more recently diversified into other areas of the Portuguese wine industry as the popularity of Matius brand has declined. In the UK in 2002, I think it's going to have a comeback, isn't it? In 2002, the wine was repackaged and relaunched in a deliberate attempt to capitalize on 1970s nostalgia. That'll keep coming around, don't worry. Although the wine itself had already been made less sweet and slightly more sparkling in response to modern popular preference for a slightly drier wine. There you go. The wine continues to be sold, however, in its distinctive narrow-necked, flask-shaped bottle with unique Baroque historic mansion label. That's the Mateus Palace in Villarreal, Portugal, and a real cork stopper, but also comes with a screw top from some distributors in Northern European countries and the UK market. Yeah, the Brits don't want to be messing around pulling the cork out. They just want to unscrew the lid and get drinking. So there you go. A little bit about Matius Rosé. Some trivia for you. Matius Rosé was among the alcoholic beverages which were stockpiled in the cellars of Saddam Hussein's palaces. It's the preferred wine of Queen Elizabeth II. And for the American gentleman who I watched last night on YouTube, who said it was a favourite wine of one of the Queens of England, if it was made in 1942, that's got to be Queen Elizabeth II. The wine is mentioned in the lyrics of the Elton John song Social Disease. I get juiced on Matius and just hang loose. There you go. A bottle of Matius can be seen in the cover photograph of Graham Nash's 1973 Wild Tales album, positioned on the mantelpiece just behind Nash's head. Extra points to you if you've got that album of Graham Nash. In 1989, May of 1989, Mike Sager's Los Angeles Times article, The Devil and John Holmes, the late porn star's ex-wife Sharon confides on their first date he'd brought a bottle of Matius and a handful of flowers. Sharon had watched through the window as he picked them from a neighbour's front yard. Classy bloke. Says a little bit about Matius, possibly. In the 1978 film Animal House, remember that, people? At the home of English Professor Dave Jennings, who was Donald Sutherland, there was some grass, in inverted commas, I'm reading from Wikipedia, is to be consumed. A Matius bottle is being used as a candle holder, obligatory in the 70s. That and Chianti bottles with straw on that were also candle holders. The original Frontier Airlines, excuse me, the original Frontier Airlines featured complimentary Matius wine as part of its meal service on selected flights and advertised this fact. Yes, come fly Frontier Airlines, free Matius Rosé on the flight. And finally, professional wrestler Andre the Giant. Anyone know him? He was said to drink 6 bottles of Matius wine before a match. Again, what could possibly go wrong when Andre the Giant drinks 6 bottles of Matius Rosé? So I feel like I've done Matius Rosé some justice and service there. And still a Matius fan, says John. Not a fan. And the wine article, I've got you, John. Yes, and seeing that picture of Jimi Hendrix, I'm sure lifted your spirits. Let's just finish finally with some feedback from one of our correspondents on our YouTube channel, which I'll give you a little preview of now. I have a little sip of water, excuse me. Agua. I promise you, it's just the pollen. Sharing the screen now with you of the YouTube channel and then going to rest myself soon after. But look, this Gordianus, Mr. Gordianus, was in correspondence with me yesterday from the YouTube channel, as was John Pabst, who listens to the podcast. Good afternoon, Mr. Munson. I'm afraid to tell you that I'm too lazy to make my own toothpaste, lol. And I did suggest that we start a brand of Good Morning Portugal toothpaste. It's perfect, isn't it? Good Morning Portugal toothpaste. First thing you see, we can start marketing that, Mrs. M. Please write that down. Tip for wine buyers: no wine under €7 except promotions in the supermarket can be considered wine. If you take in consideration cost of production and retail profit margin, wine under €7 is just water with magic dust. And magic dust does have its, merits, obviously, but we're talking about savoring good wine here. So drink half. This is Gordianus's recommendation here. Drink half of your regular amount at twice the price and save your health. I think that's fabulous advice. Matthias Rosé is something I consider to drink cold, like a refrigerant, when I'm at the grill cooking to fight the charcoal heat, and not a real wine. Forgive me, Matthias fans. Keep your videos coming, and here's another like from me. Thank you very much, Gordianus. I feel a good relationship coming on, and some schooling and education from Gordianus, who knows a lot about Portuguese life, but I'm suspecting a Portuguese man. And John Pabst says, my favourite wine, Pinga Doce Tinto Alentejano, 3 litres for €6. That would go against Gordianus's recommendations there. But that's a lockdown on a budget for John Pabst. Forgiven. And his favourite Portuguese phrase, and I want your Portuguese phrases, and I can't really shout this out because I think it's really rude. When I started to research it, you'll just see it on the screen there. I'm not going to say that in case I offend any Portuguese grandmothers who might be listening, but we can discuss that on social media, maybe on the Good Morning Portugal page. So there you go. I am proposing that we start a wine club. We could do it as a teleconference. We could get the same bottle of wine from Lidl each week or somewhere else, get it sent from some place, and we could do something like this. We have a teleconference, a bit like a book club, different wine each week, and we savor it together from the comfort and safety of our own homes, socially distanced, and no driving involved. How cool would that be? Let me know if you're interested. Finally, Matthias, my husband, doesn't drink wine. He sat in the garden one afternoon and drank one of the large bottles to himself. He was great fun. Afternoon. That, Eloise, should be on the Wikipedia trivia. That Mr. Healy indulged himself in such a way, and was great fun. And finally, last word to John. Nah, nonsense. Plenty of high quality wine available under that price. And it's like gardening. It's like which road you should drive on. The opinions will vary for everyone you ask. And that is the beauty, I think, of having a wine club, is that we've all got different tastes. We've all got different opinions. And it would be a lot of fun drinking that wine. So thanks very much for tuning in. Look forward to being with you again tomorrow, when it may be Fungi Friday. I'm a bit in the dark about that. Forgive the mushroom pun there. So take care, te logo, and ate amania. Bye for now. Thanks for all your contributions.